Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, perfect timing. I just hit the record button and you popped your drink. I like it. Okay, Friday night, Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, sipping on some whiskey. I don't know, not tonight, but most of the time, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. I believe tonight is episode 39. We're going to be doing Name That Stadium, quickly hitting the news from this past week, and then we're going to talk about how each team is doing so far in the offseason, specifically looking at the NFC and AFC West and South tonight. Last week we did the East, and next week we're going to wrap it up with the North. After that, we'll close things off with our question of the week. And so, hey, all that out there. How's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
It's going good, man. Going good. A little bit rushed getting into it tonight, but we knew this was going to be a monster, so we just got to pace ourselves anyhow, and we're going to get through this thing.
Sounds
All
good.
right. So let's do Name That Stadium. So this is the part of the show for anybody who's watching. We have a little bit of fun here. You can see James is out there traveling the country every week. He's got a new stadium in his background. And we're asking our viewers, if you think you know what stadium that is, throw your guess in our comments section. And if you're the first person to get it right, you get a special shout out in next week's show. James, why don't you tell us where you were at last week, man?
Last week I was in Washington. No real in particular reason besides it was a team we were talking about last week. So I didn't want to do Dallas, and I basically had already done the entire fucking AFC East.
So you just
you left
close
me
the
with
loop and hit them up. I got you. All right.
yeah.
Well, cool. So we had a winner for last week, Sharp Claw 61. You got it right. I hope you're watching. This is your super special shout out. They don't happen every day, so enjoy it. Unfortunately, we don't have a budget, so we don't have any cool swag or anything like that, but we do aspire. And so please keep playing. And in the future, we will hook you up when we can hook you up. All right. So with that being said, let's move on here and let's hit our recap of the news from this past week. James, I know we talked last week about the 17 game schedule. I was a bit of a downer about it. You were big on it. That's cool. I like the power of positivity. It's gonna bring me around here in time. But I did want to mention, because as a Lions fan, some news came out that the Lions had the worst win percentage in the 16 game era. And so I just kind of thought, go F and figure. Good, bad, or ugly. We like talking about the Lions. So I just had to point that out. I don't know about you, man, but I thought like Cleveland or somebody else would have been just a little bit lower than us, but apparently not.
Yeah, I thought so too. It is what it is. Like you figure they only made the playoffs like 3-4 times in like the
Yeah,
entire 16
it was
game
pretty
era.
sad. Yeah, it was pretty
Yeah.
sad. Yeah. So I guess,
So
hey, it's I don't know, like bless our hearts that we're still fans, I guess. Like that's probably the positive way of looking at it. But all right, so other than that, the big news for last week was Sam Darnold got traded by the Jets to the Panthers. The Jets are going to be getting a sixth-round pick this year, plus a second and a fourth-round pick next year. And in addition to that, they've now given Teddy Bridgewater permission to seek a trade. Any thoughts on that, James? And before you go too far on Bridgewater, save the speculation because it might be part of our question of the week.
I wasn't going to go too far on Bridgewater. I just think it's a downgrade at QB. Like, yeah, Bridgewater is not going to light it up, but what the fuck has Sam Darnold done in the NFL? There's no way that Carolina can build a team or build that offense around Sam Darnold, who, yeah, he was on a shitty team with a shitty coach, but I mean, he's played pretty shitty even still. So
Yeah, I hear you. It's tough. I like Bridgewater. I think he's a good, solid game manager. He's not lighting the world on fire like a lot of these quarterbacks nowadays are, but Darnold, man, he was a turnover machine. And so, he wasn't exactly doing his team any favors. And, maybe Matt Rule will like unlock some of that hidden potential that everybody keeps talking about with him. But I don't know. Until I see it, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah, I think we'll get to it when we get to our draft, but I still think that there's possibilities there that for starting quarterback.
Yeah, and I guess, I will say this. They didn't exactly have to break the bank to get him. And so, yeah, if there's another quarterback they can grab in the draft, maybe a guy falls or they get the right trade offer to move up a couple spots, you know, they didn't have to like sell a bunch of first round picks to get this guy. So that's, I guess, the plus side of it for Carolina.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Well, news wise, was there anything big that you wanted to mention before we move on?
I that's basically it. It was kind of a slow week news wise.
Yeah, it's that time of year, man. Yeah, it's going to be patchy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, hey, let's get to the meat and potatoes. It's the AFC, NFC, West, and South post free agency review. So I mean, we're doing half the league tonight, man. It's going to be a lot of work. So we were kind of talking before the show. I guess we'll just clarify this to anybody who's watching. I think what we're going to be doing is rotating teams. And so we'll start off with the AFC West. I'll give you my rundown on Denver, in terms of what players have left, what players have been brought in, and then just real quick, position group by position group, if I think they got better or worse. And then overall, at this point in the year, are they better or worse than where they finished the season? And what kind of positions did they need to look on improving between now and draft time or in the draft? And then I'll kick it to you for the next team. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, good stuff. So AFC West, Denver Broncos, they're up first. If we're looking at departures, running back Philip Lindsay, tight end Nick Vannett, offensive tackle DeMar Dotson, offensive tackle Elijah Wilkinson, defensive end DeMarcus Walker, defensive tackle Jarrell Casey, which I was surprised about. Linebacker Jeremiah Atochu, I always don't know how to say his name. Cornerback AJ Bouye, safety Will Parks. Some big name guys left. Additions, running back Mike Boone, defensive tackle Shelby Harris was a re-sign, so I don't need to mention him. Defensive lineman Shamar Stephen, and then cornerbacks Ronald Darby and Kyle Fuller. And so if we just go top down, I'd say at the running back position, it's a slight downgrade because they lost Philip Lindsay, but they do still have, Melvin Gordon, and so you know they got their running back one, so it's not a huge loss unless he gets hurt. At tight end, Vannett's not really highly rated, so I'm going to say it's a wash. At offensive tackle, I think losing Dotson hurts a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. These guys, they've had a hole on the offensive line anyhow, so it was already a weak position group. And then on the defensive line, I do think it hurts them losing Jarrell Casey. I know that he was, starting to lose a step, but I think he still had some juice. And so I'll say that's a downgrade. Linebacker, I don't think that linebacker is an issue because they are getting Von Miller back. He missed all of last year. And so just kind of by him being healthy, that should be an upgrade, even though transaction-wise, it was kind of a wash, nothing big there. And then at cornerback, I do like that they brought in Darby and Fuller. I think that makes up for their loss, and it actually gives them a solid improvement. And so when I'm looking at the team overall, you've got running back down a little bit, offensive lineman about even, defensive it's down a little bit, but then you got secondary up, linebacker organically is coming back up. I'm just going to say that because it should be a defensive minded team. I like the additions in the secondary and getting Von Miller back. I'm going to say they're up just slightly. My quick take on it. But then when I look at some of the holes left on the roster, I think quarterback's still a priority. Are they going to roll with Drew Lock? Or are they going to try and do something? It's getting late in the game, and they're obviously not in a good position in the draft. Offensive line, they got to get some help there. Linebacker, even with Von Miller coming back, they got to get some more linebacker help. And I do think they need another defensive end or somebody somewhere on that defensive line. And so, any thoughts on your end before we move on to the next team?
Well, I think their number one priority outside, like, it's quarterback and then it's offensive line. It's obviously Drew Lock's not going to be the answer up out there in Denver, and I mean they lost both their starting and backup right tackle into free agency, who were both pretty evenly rated. So I could see letting one of them go, but letting both Dotson and Wilkinson go is kind of hard to deal with. And what are they gonna do? I mean, they need to replace their center. They have the whole right side of their offensive line has to, or their right offensive tackles need upgrading or need somebody to go in there, and their backups in the other positions are pretty lowly rated.
I concur. Okay, great. Well, let's kick it over to you, and I'll let you do the rundown here for the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, so for the Chiefs, they lost running backs Le'Veon Bell and Damian Williams, fullback Anthony Sherman. They lost Sammy Watkins at wide receiver, Ricky Seals-Jones as tight end. They cut both Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz from tackle. Lost Osemele and Wisniewski. Gosh, I picked the wrong team to do. At guard, they lost Kilgore, Reeder at center. Defensive ends.
They lost a lot of guys, man.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce that.
Passagan or something? Yeah, I think it's
yeah. Alex Okafor, Mike Pennell. They lost linebacker Damian Wilson and cornerback Bashawn Breeland. Wow. I didn't realize they lost like half their team. So their additions, they signed Taji Sharp. They signed tight end Blake Bell. Kyle Long came out of retirement to be their offensive guard. Joe Thuney they signed. They signed center Austin Blythe and defensive tackle Jerron Reed. So at the guard position, they upgraded. Everywhere else on this team, they downgraded. Every other position is down. Running back, like you look at the running back room now, Darrell Williams is the backup who lineups has rated at like a 60, 68, where you had Damian Williams who was an 81, or Le'Veon Bell if you could have re-signed him, who was an 83. Wide receiver, it's a downgrade. Yeah, they still have Demarcus Robinson and Tyreek Hill, but I think they'll be fine there at wide receiver because Sammy Watkins spent a lot of time off the field, injured or missed games last year. Their backup tight end, it doesn't matter. Offensive line, they have a lot of work to do. They've upgraded their guard and their center position, and they kind of took a couple steps back at offensive tackle, but they are going to probably get what's his face, Duvernay Tardif.
Oh yeah, Tardif's coming back.
Yeah, he probably is gonna come back this year, I'm thinking. So, and he was their starter, so that'll be good. Mitchell Schwartz was still rated pretty high for an offensive tackle, and then basically everything else kind of took a little bit of a step back. Like, I mean, Bashaud Breeland, he's actually rated lower than I thought he would be.
Yeah, I was surprised with the lineup's grade on him too as a 72, because it seems like he outplayed that in my opinion.
Yeah, and Reimers is not a good offensive tackle. Like he's had issues in big games. He was basically when he was with he's played in 2 Super Bowls. What was the first one? Denver. Well, no, he was with whoever Denver played, and basically gave the defensive player, the MVP, because he was a sieve at offensive tackle, and then he did the same thing against Tampa Bay. Basically, couldn't block anyone, so he doesn't show up in big games. So I'm surprised they kept him and got rid of the other guys. And
Yeah,
just really,
I think Eric Fisher with that Achilles, I think a lot of people are saying 2021 is going to be a lost year for him most likely because of the timing of it. And so I guess on that one I get it. They wanted to get somebody new in there, but yeah, they've got some gaping holes, and I think like at running back they had some great depth. And so I guess really at this point it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire all the way now. Like they're banking on him just being the workhorse apparently. Um, but yeah, this team, it makes me nervous when I go through this list and I see how many guys they lost, man. I mean, it's hey, I know Mahomes is unreal, but it's like holy cow, the overall quality of the team has gone down pretty significantly, I think.
yeah, which is a surprise. Like, and I understand like they needed to shake some things up on the offensive line because they couldn't protect Mahomes in the Super Bowl, but it's just like if you look at it, they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's rated at an 83, and then their backup Sarah Williams, who's at like a 67.
Yeah,
So
it's a big drop off. Yeah.
yeah, and like they don't really use the running back much up there, but as much as you would think they do, because Mahomes can do a lot of magical things, but still they need a running game to be able for Mahomes to do what he does.
So where do you? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So they're where they have the biggest need is on the offensive line. They need offensive tackles. They got rid of two fairly good offensive tackles and kept a crappy one. So they really need to replace Reimers, however you pronounce that, and then go from there. After that, they need linebacker help. They need defensive end help and cornerback help. I think offensive tackle is obviously the top priority because it showed in the Super Bowl without protecting Mahomes, they can't win a game.
Yeah, I think you're right. They're clearly being driven by Mahomes at this point, and so it just seems like, hey, your best bet is that if worst case scenario you got to win by shootout, you got to make sure that Mahomes has time to actually make some plays. And so I would go there. I'd get some tackle help first, and I agree with all the rest. All right, good on Kansas City.
I'm good on Kansas City.
Awesome. All right, I'll take the first crack here at the Las Vegas Raiders. Looking at their departures, they had running back Devontae Booker, wide receivers Nelson Aguilar and Tyrell Williams, tight end Jason Witten, offensive tackles Trent Brown and Sam Young, offensive guard Gabe Jackson, center Rodney Hudson, defensive end Tack McKinley, defensive tackle Malik Collins, linebacker Vic Beasley and Raekwon McMillan, cornerback Daryl Worley, safety Eric Harris, and defensive back LaMarcus Joyner. A lot of guys took off from the Raiders. They added some guys too. Running back Kenyon Drake, kind of a head scratcher in my opinion. Wide receivers John Brown and Willie Snead. Center Nick Martin. Defensive end Yannick Ngakoue. Defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson. Defensive lineman Matt Dickerson and Solomon Thomas. James, the names were definitely much easier for the Raiders for me to say. So I enjoyed that. Just looking real quick at the position groups. Running back obviously went up by the addition of Kenyon Drake. But like I said, it's a bit of a head scratcher because they already got Josh Jacobs. The bigger concern for me is that when you look at what happened on the offensive line, they traded away Trent Brown, Rodney Hudson, two big pieces of that line. I know that this whole line had issues staying on the field last year, but you're basically going to be asking your running backs to do more with way less help in front of them. At wide receiver, I think Nelson Aguilar had a phenomenal year. I don't know. New England paid him quite a bit. I'm just not convinced that he's really a wide receiver one. I think he was better with the Raiders than he's going to be in the Patriots. And Tyrell Williams, he basically didn't play last year. He was hurt pretty much all year. So I do like that they added John Brown, but he's got his own injury history. And Willie Snead has always kind of been a quiet performer. And so, only because Aguilar had such a big year last year, I'm going to say the wide receiver position's down just a little bit for the Raiders. Tight end, I'm going to say it's a wash. Witten, he provided great leadership, but he was at the end of his rope. We already covered the offensive line. On the defensive line, I think they get a boost with Ngakoue. I think that they are going to miss Malik Collins at defensive tackle a little bit. Lineups has him at a 73. I think he's played a little bit better than that. I'm not like lighting the world on fire, but a little bit better. I do like they brought in Solomon Thomas. That kind of helps mitigate some of that. And so overall, I'd say offensive line is up a little bit. At linebacker, they lost Vic Beasley and Raekwon McMillan. I don't think Beasley was doing much, but I do like Raekwon McMillan, so I'm going to give him a little tick down there. Cornerback, losing Daryl Worley, they've had problems in the secondary for a long time, and they haven't really gone out and replaced anybody in this offseason. And so I think it's down, especially losing LaMarcus Joyner. But it was a rough defense as it is. So I don't know that they could have gotten much worse. I'd say at this point, their priorities are offensive line, which is crazy because they just shipped everybody out of town. Linebacker, safety, and cornerback. Pretty much other than the offensive line, this team's got to focus all defense. And so the nuts and the bolts of this add up. I'm going to say overall, this team is, let's see, running backs up, wide receiver down a little. I'm going to say they're down, man. I think that offensive line, I know that these guys had a hard time staying on the field last year, but when you lose that kind of talent, I think it's going to hurt them this year.
Yeah. So a couple things I hear a lot about the Raiders and especially their offensive line is the backup center last year, Andre James or something like that, Andrew James, whatever his full name is. I hear Gruden absolutely loves him as an offensive lineman. He's rated pretty low to my surprise, as much as I hear Gruden loves him and his ability for on the offensive line. Look, they had to get rid of Trent Brown. Trent Brown was not working out there. It was just a wasted contract. They have a couple good positions here and there. Nope, never mind, that one's gone. So they have a left tackle, and that's about it. So yeah, I would say offensive line is they have a left tackle that's their only position that's rated pretty much above us. Oh, and Incognito.
Yeah, and Incognito, when's he going to fall off the cliff, man? He's like at the end of his days in the NFL. He's been around a long time.
Yeah, he's not even listed on their depth chart from last year.
So
did he opt out?
I think I don't know I can't remember if he opted out, but I know that they had to re-sign him. So his contract must have been up and they just brought him back. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, I don't know. I found that weird that he wasn't listed on their depth chart when I was looking at it. So I mean, yeah, that's weird. Anyways, I will agree with you that they need a lot of help on an offensive line, and that defense was a sieve last year. They need to really address that.
Oh yeah. All right, so we good on the Raiders?
I'm good on the Raiders.
All right, James, I'll kick it over to you for the Los Angeles Chargers.
So for the Chargers, they lost a lot of people too, which a couple of people I think are going to be coming back, but we'll get to that. They lost Tyrod Taylor at QB. He was their backup. It's a wash.
Yeah, they're losing a little bit, but only at QB too, so it's not the end of the world. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. They lost tight ends Steven Anderson and Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry's a huge loss. Yeah, they brought in Jared Cook to try to replace Hunter Henry, but I think that when healthy, Hunter Henry had the chance to be one of the best tight ends in the league. Jared Cook's he's okay. Nothing, not a huge flash in the pan. I'm surprised he's rated as high as he is.
Yeah, that does seem like a pretty high rating on lineups. I think Henry has the higher ceiling, but I guess Cook has performed a little bit over the years, and so he's getting some love, you know.
Yeah. So at offensive tackle, they lost Sam Levi, offensive guard Forrest Lamp, and Trey Turner, centers Dan Feeney and Mike Pouncey. Defensive end Melvin Ingram. I really think Melvin Ingram's going to end up back there. Just my own personal opinion. Defensive tackle Damian Square. Linebacker Denzel Perriman. Linebacker Nick Vigil. Cornerback Casey Hayward. Safety Rashawn Jenkins. So, like I said, they signed Chase Daniels to back up Herbert. Jared Cook, tight end, to replace Hunter Henry. I think Hunter Henry, like I said, Hunter Henry has the higher ceiling. They signed offensive tackle Matt Feeler, who's a slight upgrade over Sam Levi, but we'll see. The big addition is Corey Linsley at center.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge upgrade at center, and that's a building block to have a dominant offensive line right there. Signed Kyler Fackrell, and linebacker and quarterback Ryan Smith. So their offensive line maybe took and offensive lineman Ode Abuushi, however you say it. So backup quarterback took a step back. Tight end took a step back. The offensive line has taken a little bit of a step back, but it's a big step forward with Corey Linsley. Linebacker stayed about the same. Defensive defensive line kind of took a little bit of a step back. Like I said, I think Melvin Ingram's going to be back, so it's not going to be that much on the defensive line of a loss for Damian Square. Cornerback Casey Hayward can still is a loss. It's a big loss for them. And at safety, Rashawn Jenkins, that's a big loss for them. They need to replace those. I think that they need a left tackle, and obviously they need offensive guards. They need to adjust the cornerback position, and then maybe in later rounds the defensive line. I think the left tackle and the guards are the key positions they need to address in the draft, because they have to protect Herbert. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, the news that I've been hearing, and their new coach, Staley, basically called out left tackle is the high priority. And I agree with that. I think when you look at, they've had a lot of positions drop down a little bit. And the center thing helps them big time on offense. I think Jared Cook, mitigates some of the loss of Henry. And so I'm not too worried about that. But I do think overall, where they stand right now, the talent level is down from where it was at the end of the year. They've got some work to do. I think left tackle's a priority. I'd also like to see them get a guard in there and just really beef up that offensive line for their young franchise quarterback. And then after that, all defense. Pick wherever you want to go. They need help pretty much at every level on defense. Linebacker seems to have been a big issue for them for a long time. But I think cornerback is like the common thing people are pointing to, and defensive line, because of Melvin Ingram leaving, I think is getting a little more attention too. So anyway, there seems to make sense to me. Cool. Okay, so then we are moving over to the NFC West, and I'll kick it off here with the Arizona Cardinals. Looking at their departures, quarterback Brett Hundley, running back Kenyon Drake, wide receivers Larry Fitzgerald and Trent Sherfield, tight end Dan Arnold, offensive guard J.R. Sweezy, Defensive lineman Angelo Blackson, linebackers Hassan Reddick and Devondre Campbell, cornerbacks Patrick Peterson, Dre Kirkpatrick, and Jonathan Joseph, and kicker Zane Gonzalez. Their adds at this point are quarterback Colt McCoy, wide receiver AJ Green, offensive guard Brian Winters, center Rodney Hudson, defensive end JJ Watt, cornerback Malcolm Butler, safety Sean Williams, and kicker Matt Prater. So if we just go by the position groups, backup quarterback, I'm just going to say it's a wash. I mean, Colt McCoy, he's been around a long time, so that's fine. But everybody knows it's all about Kyler Murray here. At running back, I get it. Kenyon Drake rated high, 83, flashy name. He's had some pop there in Arizona. I'm only going to say it's down slightly because I like Chase Edmonds, and I think that they're going to let him be more the bell cow this year, and he's going to surprise a lot of people. At wide receiver, I'm going to say it's a wash. Fitzgerald was on the decline. AJ Green's had some rough years, but he's coming in. It's kind of, you're trading one for the other at this point. At tight end, Dan Arnold wasn't super highly rated, but I do know that the team liked him, and so I was kind of surprised that they didn't bring him back. So I'm going to say they're down slightly. It's not a concern, though. On the offensive line, I'm going to say it's a wash at guard. At tackle, it's a wash. They didn't bring anybody new in. But at center, I'm going to say they're up big time. And I'm actually really happy that they made the trade for Rodney Hudson because I heard that they weren't focusing on the offensive line with Kyler Murray being a mobile quarterback. But it's smart. Keep that guy safe, man. Then on the defensive line, I think they're up big time with J.J. Watt coming in. That was a sweet signing, and I'm excited to see how he transforms that defense. Him and Chandler Jones, man, I'm looking forward to that. At linebacker, they're down. Hassan Reddick, he was finally coming around. And Devondre Campbell, probably better than people gave him credit for. At cornerback, I'm also going to say they're down. I know Peterson was in decline, but still savvy, still good. He still got the job done. I do like Malcolm Butler coming in. I just think that they lost so many people, and all they've really done is bring in Malcolm Butler. So it's down. Safety, they're up slightly with the addition of Sean Williams. And at kicker, on paper, this one, lineups has got Zane Gonzalez at a 76. They got Prater at an 80. I think this is a much bigger boost by bringing in Prater than what lineups would have you believe. And so I'm going to say that that's solidly up for these guys. And overall, just looking at this team, I'm going to say these guys are up because where they're up big time. And where they're down, they're really only down slightly. I like what Arizona's done in the offseason this year, which, by the way, James, is good because I think we were talking about strength of schedule the other day, and Arizona's strength of schedule last year was actually on the weaker side. And so, if the schedule's that much harder this year, they need to match it by upping their game, and they're doing it so far. Looking at their remaining priorities, I got them pegged at cornerback, linebacker, tight end, and safety. Not really in any particular order. If I had to make one of those the top priority, probably cornerback. Tight end, usually a luxury pick. It just depends, how much does Kyler Murray benefit from getting like a top tier tight end. But he is their franchise guy. So, hear what he has to say. What are your thoughts, man?
So at kicker, I agree with you that on paper it might not be that big of an upgrade getting Prater versus Gonzalez, but it was clear if you look at last year and the kicks that Zane Gonzalez missed, the coaching staff was losing confidence in him.
Yeah.
And once you start to lose confidence in your kicker, it starts to change how you coach. And so you need to bring in a new kicker. So any kicker, like we said a couple weeks ago, would be an upgrade over Zane Gonzalez at this point. And I think Prater is a huge upgrade there. I think it was something like, of their losses, like 5 of them were with 3 points or less last year, and that's because field goal kicking or the kicking was not all of them were on the kicker, but if your field goal kicker is consistent, you might be able to make that margin up. Overall, I like what they're doing, though. I agree. I mean, J.J. Watt was a huge, huge trade. I still don't think this is a playoff team yet, though. I think they need a little bit. It's not a priority there, but they need to upgrade that offensive line, and they need to protect Kyler Murray and give him a little bit more time so he's not running for his life.
Yeah. Hey, I'm good with all that. Sweet. Okay. So, yeah, and I guess before we move on with Prater, I think because we're Lions fans, we've had the benefit of seeing him up close and personal for a while now, and we know that guy, he's rock solid. He's got the leg strength. He's got the accuracy. Yeah, I think they're going to be happy with him. But, we covered that pretty well. I will hand it off to you for the Los Angeles Rams, who are up next here, James.
So the Rams have been doing a lot of subtraction and not a lot of addition this year. They traded Jared Goff. They lost Malcolm Brown at running back, Josh Reynolds at wide receiver, Gerald Everett at tight end, Austin Blythe at center, Morgan Fox, Derek Rivers at defensive end, Michael Brockers at defensive tackle, Samson.
Ebukam?
I swear, like, you give me the names that, like you.
Maybe
you
I
just,
planned it, James. Maybe I planned it.
Maybe you did. Samson Ebukam at linebacker, Troy Hill at cornerback, John Johnson at safety, and Jack McQuaid, their long snapper. Now, additions-wise, they trade in the Goff trade. They got Stafford, and they signed Deshaun Jackson at wide receiver. Losing Malcolm Brown at running back, I mean, they have Cam Akers. Cam Akers is a solid number one running back. Behind them, they have Jones. Jones is still is up there. He's not maybe not as good as Malcolm Brown, but he's a sufficient backup to take care of that. Wide receiver, Deshaun Jackson is an upgrade as long as he can stay on the field. But that's the key, is he has to stay on the field. At tight end, like, Everett was the number 2 tight end. They have Higbee who had a solid year, and I mean, you really need one solid tight end and then kind of one backup tight end. Some teams you might want to, like when you're New England, and yeah, that would be sweet, but it didn't seem like they didn't have enough to go out to keep two solid tight ends, because they didn't throw to the tight end as much. Besides Higbee, Everett didn't have that good of stats. At center, losing Blythe is huge.
Yeah,
that's a huge downgrade on that offensive line. It's the only downgrade on that offensive line. So I mean, they still have some needs there. We'll get to that in a minute. Defensive end, Morgan Fox and Derek Rivers. I mean, these are your number 2 guys. Number 3 guy. Number 2 to 3 type. That.
you'll get it. You'll get it.
Exactly. But we have Brockers listed as a tackle, but he played a lot of defensive end for them, and that's a big loss off that defensive line. Either way, whatever position you want to put him at tackle, you want to list him as an end. It's just a huge loss there. Linebacker, I'm just going to say Sampson. Linebacker Sampson's a big loss. It's a little bit of downgrade at linebacker. He was their outside linebacker, and it's just.
I think you got to give it the college try. Samson Ebukam.
It's like
See,
I said,
I'll try it. I'll try it.
Troy Hill, losing Troy Hill at cornerback. And I mean, he was their left cornerback, and they're going to need to do something there. There's are they going to move Long over there? Who knows? And then safety, John Johnson. I like that name. It's nice and easy to say.
Yeah, and he's solid, man. Cleveland got a steal by getting that guy.
Exactly. He's solid. He's probably up there at the top level, um, top top 10 safeties in the league. And losing him is huge for that defense and finding somebody to place him. Now they're almost devoid of talent at safety now. Overall, running back took a slight step back. Center took a step back, or offensive line took a step back. Defensive line took a step back. Cornerback took a step back. Safety took a step back. Quarterback, I really was trying not to address this. I don't. On paper, it's a step forward. In reality, without being able to protect him, Stafford's going to get hurt, so it's probably a step backward.
They don't want that, man, after making
Yeah.
that trade, but all right.
And then wide receiver, they took a step forward. Overall, actually, I would say this team is about level. Like they had a lot of talent there, but they lost some of the talent. They lost some of the talent in bad spots, but they kept some of like keeping Leonard Floyd was huge. If you're going to lose Ibukam.
Yeah, I think that was a good choice. Yeah.
And I think Leonard Floyd, you have to keep one, you can only keep one of them. I would pick Floyd over Ibukam anyways. They need a center. They need safety, cornerback help, and linebackers, and then I don't know if they really need defensive line. I think their defensive line, with the players they have still on that defensive line, yeah, they lost Brockers and they lost Fox and Rivers, and they do need defensive end, but defensive end. So yeah, I guess they need D line. If I had to pick a priority, I would say their centers.
Yeah.
Getting center and addressing that center position. I would also say they need to upgrade their guards. Their guards are kind of bottom barrel, and you really need to protect Stafford. He's not mobile. He could get hurt back there if you don't protect him.
Yeah, I think
overall the team's about level though.
Yeah, I think for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, they're losing a lot of depth this offseason. And I think you're being generous by keeping them at even. I think that's saying Stafford's a lot better than Goff was, which I don't know. I have mixed opinions on it. And I really don't think Deshaun Jackson's going to play that much because just looking at these last couple of years, it seems like he's never on the field. And so I don't know. I think that the lack of depth it could bite them in the ass, especially as the season goes on. And they're really going to need Stafford to be playing at a high level all year, which, like you're saying, they better protect him. They better get they better get a center, and they might want to look at getting some guard help. They got to do something to keep him upright. And he had some injuries early in his career, and in recent years he's had some stuff pop back up. But he did have a very good run, 7-8 years where he stayed very healthy. And so we'll see how that shakes out for these guys. But yeah, when I see a team losing this much depth, I'm like, oh, I get it. Some of these guys are backups, but I think at some point it's going to catch you, man.
Yeah, I can see that, but I mean that defense, even if that defense was stacked, like
yeah.
they had so much talent on the defense, it was unsustainable.
Yeah, and then you got McVay calling the offense, like he'll cover up some blemishes. So they should still be in good shape, but I'd put them down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you got them even. It's we're not that far off.
About even. Like I mean, it is a little bit one way, a little bit another way, depending on
plus or minus. Yeah, a little here, a little there. I got you. All right, cool. So next up, we've got the San Francisco 49ers. And so if we look at their departures, we got quarterback C.J. Beathard. I know I didn't say his name right. Running back Tevin Coleman. Running back Jerick McKinnon. Wide receivers Kendrick Bourne, Marquise Goodwin, Chris Thompson. Tight end Jordan Reed. center Ben Garland, defensive ends Ezekiel Ansah, Ronald Blair, Solomon Thomas, defensive tackle Kerry Hyder, cornerbacks Richard Sherman and Akello Witherspoon. If we kick it over and look at their additions, they brought in quarterback Nate Sudfeld, wide receivers Mohamed Sanu and Trent Sherfield, center Alex Mack, which is a move I really like, defensive lineman Zach Kerr, linebackers Samson Ebukan, Nate Jerry, and safety Tavon Wilson. So if I look at these side by side, I'm just going to say the quarterback thing's a wash. I don't think there's anything to worry about there. These are backup guys anyhow. At running back, I did like Coleman, and I thought McKinnon showed some flashes last year, like he's finally getting healthy. But I'm going to say they're only down slightly at running back because we know Shanahan finds these guys, man, and he just plugs people in. Plus, they still have Raheem Mostert, who ended up being basically their main guy anyhow. At wide receiver, similar kind of deal. I'm going to say they're down slightly. Mohamed Sanu's coming in. He's didn't do much in Detroit, but lineup seems to like his rating. And then when you look at Kendrick Bourne and Marquise Goodwin, those guys didn't really put a ton on the field anyhow. So they're down a little bit, but not a lot. At tight end, I'm going to say they're also down a little bit. Jordan Reed did come in and have some good games when Kittle was out last year. And so if Kittle misses time again this year, that'll hurt him. But if Kittle stays healthy, I don't think that that's a huge miss. On the offensive line, I think bringing in Alex Mack, even at this point in his career, I think that's a solid upgrade at center. And so I think they did good there. On the defensive line, this is a team that's, historically had a lot of depth. And, some names are leaving. Ziggy Ansah, I don't think he did much, so they're not going to miss him too much. Solomon Thomas is a name, he's been there for a little while. That's one that they might miss a little bit, even though lineups only has him at a 71. And then Kerry Hyder, defensive tackle. I like him going back to his time in Detroit. I think he's one of those kind of blue collar guys, grinds it away, appropriate for Gridiron Grinder. Hey, he's leaving. Hopefully he lands in a better place. I'll say their defensive line is down slightly because of just the volume of losses. At linebacker, I'm going to say they're up just a little bit. The guys they added, they're not expecting to be much more than depth. And so I can't really give them a big uptick there. At cornerback, I'm going to say down slightly. The loss of Richard Sherman hurts, but this is another one of those deals. The guy barely played last year, so I can't say that they're that much worse than they were last year just because he's gone. And at safety, I do like they brought in Tavon Wilson. I think he's another one of those blue-collar, kind of solid, under-the-radar kind of guys, but not game-changing, only up a little bit. And so if I'm looking at these guys overall, because Alex Mack, in my opinion, gives them a nice bump up, it offsets a lot of those like slightly downs that I'm talking about. And so, kind of like you did with the Rams, I'm going to say these guys are about even, in my opinion. Maybe down a little bit. It's kind of like that plus or minus, depending on which way you're going to look at it. And then looking at their priorities of what's left here, quarterback is the big thing. What are they going to do with Jimmy G? It looks like they position themselves to draft a guy. And so I just put that as their top priority because that's clearly something's going to happen there. And then other than that, I think they could use some help at cornerback. They need to get some more depth now on the defensive line. And even though they got Trent Williams and now Alex Mack, I would like to see them land a guard at some point in the draft just to start adding a little bit more depth on that offensive line. I don't think it's a gaping hole for them. I'm a big believer in the trenches. And so that is my take. What do you think there, James?
I think it's a solid take. I would say, yeah, they're about even. I don't know about signing Sanu. Like he had a flash in the pan in Atlanta, and he hasn't done. Atlanta, was it? Yeah, Atlanta.
Yeah, with Shanahan, by the way. So maybe he's thinking
True.
He can squeeze a little bit out of him.
That is a good point. I forgot that was when Shanahan was still there. So I can see that. Okay, yeah, I would give them maybe slightly up because this team had a lot of surprises in it last year, and a lot of players that stepped up, and I think I would say they're slightly up.
Okay, I like the positivity. Okay, cool. So, last but not least, for the NFC West at least, is the Seattle Seahawks. James, I will hand it over to you, my friend.
And I'm going to do this assuming the Russell Wilson trade goes through. So,
Oh, jeez. It's not going to happen this year, dude. I think it's too late now. But hey, who knows? Crazier things have happened.
all right. So Seattle lost quarterback Geno Smith, backup quarterback. It's more importantly, they're going to lose Russell Wilson, so they're not going to have a quarterback on the roster, and they're going to have to draft him. But I'm still saying they are.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
but they lost Geno Smith, their backup quarterback. Lost Carlos Hyde again, their number 2 running back. They still have Chris Carson. They still have Rashawn Penny, maybe even number 3. Josh Gordon. I don't even think Gordon played last year, so
Yeah, there's nothing to worry about there. He's
yeah.
been mostly out for a lot of years now.
David Moore, the other wide receiver, he was their slot wide receiver. That's actually a big loss for the team, I think.
It hurts, but yeah, it's their wide receiver 3. It's not like earth shattering. But yeah, it does hurt him a little bit. I agree.
Yeah, like I mean, well, it's mainly because that like he was like their main slot guy, and I don't know who they're gonna
Yeah.
slide into that position. They lost all 3 of their tight ends they had on the roster last year: Jacob Hollister, Greg Olsen, Luke Wilson. I think Olsen retired. Did he
I
finally
think, yeah, I
retire?
believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
And the other ones are on. They were okay. Luke Wilson had flashes. Hollister had flashes. And nothing to write home about. I swear you gave me all the teams with the
The tricky
terrible
names.
things.
Hey, you
It,
just gotta give it the old college try, man. Like a lot of them, I just spit it out there, and I probably do it so fast you're just like, oh yeah, it sounds right. Yeah.
yeah, they lost guard Micah Potty, Chance Warmack, sorry. Um, eh, meh, meh. I not household names. They signed guard Gabe Jackson, big upgrade. Uh, Lost defensive tackle John Reed. Where did he end up?
He went to Kansas City, I want to say.
No, because I would have talked about him.
Let's see. No, he did go to Kansas City.
Ah, I missed it. I didn't even talk about him. Darn it.
Hey, no backsies. No, you can
Yeah,
hit
I
it
know.
if. Hey,
I think that's a big loss. Sean Reed, I thought he's pretty talented defensive tackle.
yeah,
I think they signed Kerry Holder and Al Woods. Al Woods is okay. I don't think the lineups rating for is accurate here with Reed and Woods. I think they have them flipped on lineups.
sure.
But at linebacker they lost Shaquem Griffin and Bruce Irvin, KJ Wright. I still could not believe that they did not bring KJ Wright back. I
It blows my mind, man. It actually,
yeah.
James, I'll tell you what, it actually bothers me that they haven't brought him back. Like, it just, something doesn't feel right without him being on the Seahawks, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I I don't know how to take it. So I mean, they still have Brooks and they still have Wagner at linebacker, but I mean, this defense left a little bit to desired last year.
Yeah.
But
It
oh, they
got
lost
better.
Shaquille Griffin too.
I tell you what,
Jesus.
that that defense did start to come around after Carlos Dunlop came onto the team. And, I thought it was good that they brought him back. But yeah, when I see some of these losses, notably KJ Wright and Shaquille Griffin, ah man, I don't know. They got some work to do, I think.
Yeah, like it's like I'm just seeing it for the first time that they lost Shaquille Griffin, and and losing KJ Wright, and like those are huge losses,
Yeah.
huge losses. And they added Witherspoon at cornerback, which is a big downgrade compared to Quentin Dunbar and Shaquille Griffin. At quarterback, they still have Flowers, but I mean, this team is this team is way down.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're hurting, dude. They're hurting.
No
I, I
wonder Russ wants the fuck out of there.
I think it was, I think bringing in Gerald Everett at tight end was a decent move when you look at the guys that they lost. And I think
Yeah,
that bringing in
and
Gabe Jackson on the
Gabe
offensive
Jackson,
line,
exactly.
that helps. But I don't think it's enough to offset these downgrades, particularly on defense.
Yeah, and the thing with the offensive line there, the offensive line still needs a lot of help there.
For
I
sure.
think they Russ was sacked like 448 times in the last like 4 years or last year or something, like some ridiculous number that you hear and you're like, what the how the fuck did that happen?
Yeah, and for a guy who's as evasive as he is too, like
Yeah.
yeah, and it's been that way his whole career. Like they just
hmm
have never prioritized the offensive line. I don't get it, dude. I do not get it.
It's that theory. It's a mobile-ish quarterback that you don't have to protect him. It's the stupidest theory. You need to protect a mobile quarterback more.
Yeah, they should be I don't know, dude. I mean, hey, I say it all the time. It's all about the trenches. You gotta protect your quarterback and you gotta get to the other team's quarterback. Like that's where you start. Everything else, you worry about that later. Like, I just so many teams, like when I go through the rosters, so many teams have weak offensive lines, James. It drives
hmm
me nuts.
So overall, this team is way down. Overall, this team is wow. I can't believe I'm going to say this. The Seattle Seahawks, based on their losses they had this offseason and who they've added, are going to end up in fourth place in the NFC West.
Oh shit. That's calling it big, man. That's calling it big.
They, it's like yeah, like running back kind of stayed the same. QB, that's your backup QB. Who cares? I think the loss of David Moore as their slot wide receiver is huge. I don't think Gerald Everett's much of an upgrade at tight end. I think yeah, they upgraded with getting Gabe Jackson on that offensive line, but they basically kept that offensive line together. They
Hmm.
they went down a little bit at defensive tackle, went down at linebacker, went down big at linebacker, went down big at cornerback, and they looking
Again,
at the other teams in this division, they might be the worst team in this division.
they could slide, man. They could slide. And I tell you what, at some point, whether we're going with lineups or we're going with, maybe we get some PFF action or something. It would be nice to just do like an export if we could get one and try and come up with like a team grade and just say, okay, here's where we think they shake out based on like an actual rating source looking at the new rosters and see how they position them because yeah, I could see Seattle coming down. And I remember in the playoffs, man, you called it fraudulent, I believe, that they were in the playoffs or whatever, or their record or I mean, something about it. It was like, Seattle won way more games than you thought they deserved. And so this could be their fall from grace. You never know. But
Mm-hmm.
okay, so closing it down here with Seattle, where do you think they got to prioritize now?
Oh, I completely forgot about that. I was just blown away with some of these losses. Okay, so they need to prioritize the offensive line. I I think offensive line is number one. They they need to protect Russ. He's been sacked way too many times. I'm sorry. They need to protect whoever's playing quarterback for Seattle next year, seeing as though it will not be Russ. Um, they need to address the cornerback. The pass defense was subpar last year, but I mean, Shaquille Griffin is a huge loss at cornerback, and they need that. Then after that, I would go linebacker and defensive tackle.
Okay, I got you. I'm good with all that, man. Yeah, that one caught us off guard a little bit. We weren't expecting that from a Seattle team that's usually been very solid with their roster. They're moving in the wrong direction. Okay, so let's kick it over now, and we're going to do the AFC and NFC South. So starting with the AFC, we've got the Houston Texans. I'll take these guys. We'll go from there. Departures, quarterbacks A.J. McCarron and Josh McCown, running back Duke Johnson, wide receiver Will Fuller, tight end Darren Fells, offensive guard Zach Fulton, center Nick Martin, offensive lineman Senio Calamente, defensive ends Carlos Watkins and J.J. Watt, linebackers Tyrell Adams and Benardrick McKinney. I like that guy, man. And punter Brian Anger. Their ads, these guys have a freaking ton of ads. Quarterback Ryan Finley, also Tyrod Taylor, running backs Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay, wide receivers Chris Conley, Andre Roberts, Alex Erickson, and Dante Moncrief, tight end Ryan Izzo, offensive tackle Marcus Cannon, offensive guard Justin McCray, offensive lineman Justin Britt, defensive ends Shaq Lawson and Derek Rivers, defensive tackle Malik Collins, linebackers Camu Grugier-Hill, linebacker Jordan Jenkins, Christian Kirksey, and at cornerback Terrence Mitchell, Desmond King, and Tavier Thomas, safety Terrence Brooks, punter Cam Johnson, and let's not forget the long snapper John Weeks. So James, a ton of activity for the Texans. Okay, let's look at quarterback. This is the hot button issue for the team. If you look on paper with their departures and their additions, I think you would say they're up a little bit, but only at QB2 because they got Tyrod Taylor coming in. The problem is
probably that's their QB1.
That's where I was going. The problem is if he's got to be their QB1, it's a big drop down from Deshaun Watson to Tyrod Taylor. And I like Tyrod Taylor, but Watson has been one of these sort of generational talents that we've seen. And so it looks like it's moving in that direction. I don't have a crystal ball, but Tyrod Taylor could be their guy, in which case I believe quarterback goes down. At running back, I know that you weren't a huge fan of Mark Ingram when I was pumping him up a couple weeks ago, but I do like that they brought in both him and Philip Lindsay. I think that they've got a nice stable of running backs now, especially because they still have David Johnson. Not that he's lighting the world on fire, but I think that that's a respectable trio when you consider that they're probably going to be running the ball a heck of a lot more this year if Deshaun Watson's not in there. At wide receiver, I do think they're down. I liked Will Fuller, and I know that he had some injury history, but a lot of the guys they brought in, basically it's like they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. None of these guys are really game changers. Conley's had some stats. Robert here and there's had some stats. Moncrief has mostly been hype about his height, weight, speed, that kind of stuff. It's not really translated onto the field that well. At tight end, I think they're down a little bit. I liked Fells. I think his lineups rating's a little bit low. And Ryan Izzo coming in, he just hasn't done much yet in the league. And so maybe he takes a step up, but I think they're down a little bit there. On the offensive line, I do like that they brought in Marcus Cannon. I think that's a bump. I think it's a wash at guard. And even though lineups has Nick Martin at a 69, I do think that that's a slight downgrade because they didn't backfill him. And I thought Nick Martin was at least serviceable, to be honest, my opinion. They did bring in offensive lineman Justin Britt, so I guess like in the grand scheme of things, that mitigates it. And I guess really looking at it, they're up overall on the offensive line, which is a big deal. That's something that they needed to do with Deshaun Watson before, and they didn't get it done. Now, they didn't make like a big splash here, but it's a noticeable improvement, so that's good. It's going to help Tyrod Taylor, especially if he's the guy. On defensive line, hey, there's no way around it, man. They lost J.J. Watt. These guys are down. Okay, they brought in Shaq Lawson, Derek Rivers. That helps a little bit. but it's not J.J. Watt. And even Malik Collins, it helps, but they're still down. And at linebacker, I was a big McKinney fan, and so I don't like what they did there. I think they're down at linebacker. At cornerback, I do like that they brought in Desmond King, and then even just throwing the dart at Terrence Mitchell and some of these other guys. I think their defensive backs, they got a little bit of a bump here. And looking at punter, special teams does matter. On paper they are down, and I would agree with that. I think Brian Anger was solid. Cam Johnston, I don't really personally know a ton about him, but lineups has only got him at a 71. So looking at the team as a whole, because of what's going on with Deshaun Watson, because of the loss of J.J. Watt, I am going to say this team is down overall, and I'm going to say it's actually like fairly significant. I do like the ads that they made, and if Watson somehow gets cleared from all this and plays, I don't think it's all that bad. I think they're actually in pretty good shape. But I'm saying it's leaning the wrong way right now, so I'm going to say this team is down. And looking at their priorities, I didn't put quarterback on here, but obviously it becomes a priority depending on how this thing shakes out. I think they need help at wide receiver. I think they need help on the defensive line, whether it's at defensive end or defensive tackle. They got a couple holes to fill. I think they need help at linebacker. I think they need help in the secondary, although not quite as pressing. It's a bit of a luxury pick, but I do think they could use like a legit tight end, and I know that they still got Atkins, I believe, and he showed some potential last year, but this is a team that they've kind of for a long time now been playing with subpar tight ends, and that's a mean thing to say because I do think Fells and the guys that they had were overachievers, but their skill level, they just didn't have a high ceiling. I'd like to see them get a guy that has some potential to grow. I guess that's all I'm saying. What do you think, man?
Basically, yeah. I think I like the addition of Desmond King. Like I said, I heard you say. I think punter. So many times punting the ball, pinning that team back inside the 10 is huge. Not having to go forward to get a touchback. I've never heard of Cam Johnson, but then again, nobody really ever hears of punters, anyways. I think this team last year they way underperformed looking at the talent that they actually had on that roster.
Yeah.
And I mean, despite how terrible they played, and with 4 wins, somehow Deshaun Watson had like led like every quarterback statistically almost. And I mean, yards, I think it was touchdowns. He was up there, and Deshaun Watson carried this team on his back to what they have 4 wins, and they have no draft picks.
Yeah, that's the thing that kills them is that they sold the farm on a bunch of stuff that didn't really pay off for them.
Yeah, so their priorities might be their priorities, but where are they going to get them?
Yeah, good point. Good point. So you're just saying it doesn't matter. They're effed.
Yeah, they're effed. They might as well. I think, and this is going to sound weird to say, I think the best thing that could happen to this team is Deshaun Watson is suspended for the year by the league or by the team, and they just bottom out because I think they finally have their own first round pick next year.
Okay, and so then they can hit something in the draft and maybe start working their way
Yeah.
back, assuming Watson
Exactly.
comes back the year after. You're saying, okay.
Yeah. Then again, Watson's probably not going to play for Houston again, like you said. So, yeah, they're just effed. Thank you, Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, I guess I gotta like just clarify that I don't know what way that case is gonna go or anything. I just think with like the sheer volume of claims against him, it's looking pretty rough. But it's anybody's guess. And so I don't want to act like I'm some expert, like I got some inside opinion here or knowledge here. It just doesn't look good, and I don't know. It just, we'll see what happens. But okay, so James, back to you, my man. Indianapolis Colts. Hit it up.
All right. So the Colts, they lost Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Rivers at quarterback, and they added Carson Wentz. While lineups has Phillip Rivers at an 87 and Wentz at a 72, I think this is about a wash at the cornerback position.
Okay.
Quarterback position.
And listen, and I don't mean to jump in like right as you're getting started here, but I do think it's important to point out the connection with Wentz and Frank Reich. That was Wentz's best statistical year in Philadelphia when Reich was his guy there. And so, there is that glimmer of hope that this could be like the resurrection of Wentz, and maybe it ends up being way better than Phillip Rivers was for that team. You never know.
Right, exactly. But I can't, and I'm trying to do I believe that's what's going to happen is Wentz is going to be back to his form on the year Philadelphia won the Super Bowl before he blew out his knee and he was lighting it up an MVP candidate. I believe that's what's going to happen under Reich.
Okay.
But I have to run under the assumption that it's not when I'm looking at this, because otherwise we could go to any of these teams and say, well, so-and-so, Derek Rivers is going to come out and have an amazing year. I kind of got to be tempered in your enthusiasm for it, because until you see it, you can't think that it's going to happen.
Yeah. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. I got you.
Like me and the Lions last year, motherfuckers. Tight end, they lost Trey Burton. So, offensive tackle, they lost Anthony Costanzo and Chaz Green.
Yeah, Costanzo retired, man. That one's going to hurt him.
Yeah. They had a Julian Davenport and Sam Levi at offensive tackle. The offensive tackle is way down without Costanzo. Hugely down. Huge. Definitely.
Yeah. And I tell you, that is actually my one concern of, how is this going to affect Wentz? Because this isn't like that top offensive line unit like it has been in the past. Without Costanzo, you got to say, hey, they got to go out and get a guy in the draft, because he was their left tackle, man. Like, that's a big deal. And that could change the whole dynamic of an offensive line, even if everybody else is still playing solid.
Exactly. And that's going to be it has to be their number one priority, is to find that left tackle in the draft or whatever's left out there in free agency. Defensive end, they lost Danico Autry. Linebackers, they lost Justin Houston and Anthony Walker. These are, again, huge step backs on this defense. This defense was pretty good last year, and on top of that, they lost TJ Carey at cornerback, Malik Hooker and Tavon Wilson at safety. This defense is, looking at that, this defense is going to take a step back this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still have DeForest Buckner, and they have a pretty decent backfill with Toure at defensive end behind Autry, but they don't really have the other side of the defense set up. They need linebacker help with losing Houston and Walker. Sorry, my eyes misaligned. Malik Hooker, I think he was solid. They still have Blackman and Wilson at safety. So I'm sorry, not Blackman and Wilson. Blackman and Willis at safety. And they added DB Sean Davis. Overall, this team looks to have taken a step back. The offensive line, that's huge with Costanzo retiring. That's a huge step back. You need that anchor on the at tackle to protect the quarterback, especially Carson Wentz, who has been injured in the past and is he's mobile kind of sometimes, but he doesn't have the confidence that he had a couple years ago, and he needs to regain that. And the best way to regain that is to protect him.
Yeah.
So left tackle is the number one priority. After that, defensive end, and I would say cornerback. Tight end, it's a luxury pick. They still have don't they still have Doyle there though?
Yeah, they still have Jack Doyle. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think Doyle's a pretty decent tight end that can be that safety net for Wentz, but Wentz has to get his confidence. Overall, I'd say this team took a step back so far in free agency.
I agree with you there, man. I think they're down, and it's actually down like a decent bit. So what do you think their priorities are now, aside from left tackle?
You must have zoned out. I
Oh,
said defensive end, and cornerback.
okay. Thank you. Yes, I did have a slip there. Okay. So are you good on them?
I'm good on them.
All right, moving it over. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'll run you through the departures. We got quarterback Mike Glennon, running back Chris Thompson, wide receivers Keelan Cole, Chris Conley, and Dede Westbrook, tight ends Tyler Eifert, James O'Shaughnessy, and Josh Oliver, defensive tackle Avery Jones, linebacker Kamale Correa, cornerback DJ Hayden, and then at additions, we've got CJ Beathard at quarterback, running back Carlos Hyde, wide receivers Jamal Agnew, Philip Dorsett, and Marvin Jones. At defensive end, they brought in Jihad Ward, and at defensive tackle, they brought in Malcolm Brown and Roy Robertson Harris. At linebacker, Damian Wilson, cornerback Shaquille Griffin, safety Rudy Ford, and safety Rayshon Jenkins. So when I look at the position groups, at quarterback on paper, it's a wash. But we know that this is going to go up because they're going to grab Trevor Lawrence in the draft. At running back, I'm going to say they're only up slightly. I do like Carlos Hyde as an upgrade over Chris Thompson, who basically didn't even play last year. But we know Robinson is their go-to guy now at running back. Hyde will be a good complementary piece coming off the bench. At wide receiver, okay, you can say what you want here. I don't know what your reaction is going to be to this. I'm saying it's a wash, man. I know they brought in Marvin Jones and he got some hype, but here's the deal. I thought Keelan Cole, Chris Conley, and Dede Westbrook were all pretty good in that offense. It's just that it was like you had too many of the same kind of wide receivers and not enough balls to go around. And in particular, I think Dede Westbrook really could have stepped up even more if there would have been more opportunity in that passing game. Is Marvin Jones better on paper than all three of those guys? Yeah, but Philip Dorsett, no. Jamal Agnew, no. So you brought in one, like maybe a little bit better guy to replace three other guys. I don't know. I just think it's a wash at best. At tight end, I'm going to say they're down, but only slightly. I had a lot of hope for Tyler Eifert. There were a lot of good reports of him going into the season last year that he was finally healthy. He was actually coming off an okay year in Cincinnati the year before, but it just didn't happen. And same with the other guys, O'Shaughnessy and Oliver. They're down, but it's not a huge downgrade. At defensive line, I'm going to say it's a little bit of wash at defensive end. But at defensive tackle, despite the lineups grades, I think they are up solidly with Malcolm Brown and Roy Robertson Harris. I watched Malcolm Brown a lot when he was with the Saints, and I watched Robertson Harrison a lot with the Bears. And I disagree with these lineups ratings. I think both these guys are overachievers. Avery Jones, yeah, he's gone, but now they're bringing in two guys that I think easily make up for that. So I like that. At linebacker, I'm going to say they're up. I think Damian Wilson, like everybody talks about, oh, hey, former, Super Bowl experience kind of guy, good for the locker room. And he's a solid rating too. So I think that's good. At cornerback, I do like that they brought in Shaquille Griffin. I don't really know that he can be a true cornerback one, and we talked about that earlier with the free agency stuff. But he gives them a good shot, and so we'll see how that shakes out. And then at safety, I'm going to say they're up slightly. Rudy Ford, Rayshon Jenkins, not lighting the world on fire, but it helps. It's better than not bringing anybody in for depth. And so when I'm looking at this team, I think the net result is that they're up decently going into the draft, and it makes sense. They had a lot of money to spend. They made a lot of moves. They got a whole new regime, bringing in their new guys. I think some of these things were smart, like the trade for Malcolm Brown. I think it was a very smart move that's going to benefit this team, even though it's kind of flying under the radar. And then so looking at their priorities, quarterback is obviously number one, and they're going to land their guy with the number one pick. After him, I think they still could use some help on the defensive line, particularly at defensive end. They could use some help at safety. And offensive line, here's the thing. Their offensive line didn't play horrible last year. And I like that they brought back Cam Robinson, but I do just kind of think, hey, you're drafting a guy number one overall. Maybe you should prioritize and get a couple offensive linemen just to be safe, because we saw what happened with Joe Burrow last year. You don't want that kind of thing having a repeat. And then, this is a luxury pick, but, at some point they should address the tight end position, especially with a young quarterback. You always hear tight ends, rookie quarterback's best friend, man. So, get him a best friend, That's my take, man. What do you think?
I agree. They had a lot of money. I mean, they still have a lot to address on this team. I mean, offensive line is got to be the second area right behind quarterback, because if you can't protect your quarterback, you can't win games.
Nope. That's it.
Sorry.
That's all you got.
That's it.
I bored you that much, huh? You're falling asleep on me. Well, here,
No.
let me put the attention back on you. Next up, we got the Tennessee Titans. James, this is all yours, man.
All right. So at Tennessee, they lost wide receivers Corey Davis and Adam Humphries. They replaced Corey Davis with Josh Reynolds. Downgrade. Big downgrade. Huge downgrade. What the fuck are you thinking downgrade? Tight ends, they lost Mikoyle Pruitt and Jonnu Smith. Huge downgrade. Humongous downgrade. Jonnu Smith is probably one of the best up-and-coming tight ends right alongside Hunter Henry, and both of them are going to be on the same fucking team. God damn fucking New England. All right. I'll try not to bitch about New England too much, because we're not talking about the AFC East this week.
Okay.
So, offensive tackle, they lost Dennis Kelly and Isaiah Wilson. Isaiah Wilson's not that big of a deal. Dennis Kelly, it's a little bit more of a deal. They brought in Kendall Lamb to replace him. As much as this team is good at running the ball, as good as this team is running the ball, the offensive line had some areas to be desired, and Henry kind of just overcame them. So I can see getting rid of these tackles. It might be a little bit of a step back, might be an upgrade with Kendall Lamb. We'll see, but they need to do something.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think their big concern on the offensive line is at right tackle now. It seems like that's what I keep hearing everybody talk about, is that the rest of the line they think they're comfortable with, but they got a hole at that one right tackle spot.
Well, I think they have a hole at every position besides left guard and center, but that's just me.
Okay. And like you said, Derrick Henry just he bulldozes people anyhow, so he's covering it
Yeah.
up.
And when you can run like Derrick Henry can, and you can with Derrick Henry, the the quarterback, it kind of slows up the defense, the pass rush a little bit. So that's I think that Derrick Henry is kind of covering up the problems they have at um, on the this offensive line. Hold on, I gotta take this off. It's getting warm in my house.
Hey, that's all good, man. I've been pounding the water over here because it's boiling in my office, man.
Yeah. So um, defensive end, they lost Jack Crawford and signed Danico Autry. This is an upgrade here. Um, I think Crawford played okay, but I think Danico Autry is just that much better. That much better. I'll get to it in a second. Hold on. It's just got really, really fucking warm. All right. So they lost Daquan Jones at defensive tackle. This is a big loss. Like they still have Simmons, but outside of that, they don't have much as well as talent at on the defensive line or at defensive tackle, and that's concerning because this team this it's one division last year, playoff team the year before went to the championship game, and they seem to be slowly taking steps back.
Yeah, I think they're down significantly, to be honest, when I'm looking
Yeah,
at this list. You know, I like they
yeah,
brought in, I like that they brought in Bud Dupree
right.
and
Exactly. Bud Dupree over and losing Clowney. Like I like Bud Dupree. I think it's only a slight downgrade for them. Uh, Losing Butler, Adoree Jackson, Desmond King, and getting Janoris Jenkins and Kevin Johnson at corner back. I think that's kind of a wash almost. Like I like Butler, but he seems to be all name and no lately all hype, no action. And outside of that, I like Desmond King's a big loss, but I still like Janoris Jenkins. I think he's rated a little lower than I think he should be.
I do like him, but yeah, it seems like these last couple of years, all I've been hearing is his streakiness. You know, like he makes a big play and then he gets burned on a big play, and so. But I've always been a big fan of Janoris Jenkins, and I was actually pounding the table for the Lions to go after him in the draft years ago, but that ship obviously sailed. So,
Mm-hmm. And then Kenny Vaccaro, they lost at safety. Matthias Fairley, they signed, downgrade. Gostkowski, they lost at kicker. Look, Gostkowski had his struggles last year.
yeah, he had a
Everyone
bad
knows
year.
that.
Yeah.
They'll figure out. It's like Zane Gonzalez. They lost the confidence in him. They're gonna have. I mean, you have to move on. As far as needs for the team, I know everyone's saying only right tackle, but I think they need to, like I said, they need to address the offensive line. They have two studs on that offensive line. They have to kind of build out from there. Left tackle is the key. Left tackle is the key position on the offensive line, and I don't really like their left tackle. I don't like their
Oh,
remaining
Taylor
right tackle.
Lewan.
Yeah, wait, Taylor Lewan.
Yeah,
Why the
isn't he
fuck
their left
is
tackle?
why
He
is my
was
depth charts different?
so I think he got put on IR at some point last year, so maybe he got knocked off the sheet you're looking at.
I forgot about Luan.
All right, so yeah, so you think they need help on the offensive line? I think they need to get another wide receiver, somebody other than AJ Brown that can kind of like fill that void, dropping down to Josh Reynolds. What else do you think, man?
Uh, cornerback, like tight end. It's we keep saying it's a luxury pick, but but losing a player like Johnny Smith. It's hard to replace. But I would say right tackle and wide receiver should be their number one, number two, whatever order you want to put it in priorities. This is a good draft to need a wide receiver in because there's a whole shitload of them
Yeah.
that are going to be solid. Yeah.
Okay. Enough said.
But yeah,
Yep.
they keep taking steps back. Is the thing I'm seeing with them.
Yeah, that's concerning. It's concerning. This is a team that they should be making a deeper and deeper push, and it's harder to do that unless they got guys developing that we're not seeing. Which that's the piece of this that we don't see. We're just looking
Mm-hmm.
at purely departures and additions. Okay, so moving over to the NFC South, we got the Atlanta Falcons up first. Departures: quarterback Matt Schaub, running backs Todd Gurley and Brian Hill, wide receiver Laquan Treadwell, offensive guard James Carpenter, center Alex Mack, defensive end Alan Bailey and Charles Harris, cornerback Darquez Denard, safeties Ricardo Allen and Keanu Neal, and defensive back DeMonte Kazee. They've added running back Mike Davis, tight end Lee Smith, offensive lineman Josh Andrews, defensive tackle Jonathan Bullard, linebackers Brandon Copeland and Barcavius Mingo, cornerback Fabian Moreau, and safety Eric Harris. Looking at the quarterback spot, hey, Schaub, he's been hanging in the league a long time, but if he ever had to get into action, it wasn't going to be good. So I'm just going to say it's a wash. There's no up or down by losing him. At running back, I'm going to say they're up slightly by bringing in Mike Davis. Gurley, man, he was hawking some touchdowns last year, but he didn't really do much else. I think Davis gives him a little bit more versatility that'll help him out there. At wide receiver, I'm going to say it's a wash. Treadwell, he's not done much, pretty much his whole career, unfortunately. And at tight end with Lee Smith, them adding him, it helps, but Hayden Hurst is really their guy, so I'm going to say it's kind of a wash. Same on the offensive line with guard. I do think they are down solidly by losing Alex Mack, which I talked about earlier with the 49ers getting Mack. At defensive end, I think they're down a little bit. It's not unbearable. The defensive end was already a weakness for them as it is, so it's just they couldn't get that much worse. Um, Linebacker, down a little bit, but it's mostly a wash, I would say. Same at cornerback. And at safety, I'm going to say they're down a little bit because they lost Keanu Neal, even though he was starting to decline. I think it does hurt. And so when I'm looking at the team overall, I'm going to say they're down. It's one of these things. It's like down somewhat to down like decently. They've just got a lot kind of either treading water or going in the wrong direction. I do like the Mike Davis pick, but it's going to depend on how much they use him because they are a pass first team. And so when I look at their needs, I think defensive end is number one. I think everybody pretty much agrees on that. This is a team that has swung and missed at defensive end over and over again. They got to figure this thing out, man. And then aside from that, I think they could use some help at cornerback. I think they could use some help for sure now on the offensive line, at safety, and defensive tackle as well.
I also think they need a better tight end.
Okay. You didn't like what you saw from Hayden Hurst last year?
No, I didn't like what I saw from Hayden Hurst. I didn't like much of what I saw from this team last year, so that's not saying much. But I think getting that tight end, you have Julio who can stretch the field. You have Calvin Ridley. Get a tight end in there, and I think you have probably one of the strongest receiving core in the league, and that would open it up for Mike Davis to be able to run the ball as effectively as he did last year.
Okay. All right. I got you. Anything else for the Falcons?
No, I don't think so. I think that was it.
All right, man. Well, then I'm going to kick it over to you for the Carolina Panthers.
All right, so the Panthers, they lost running back Mike Davis. We just talked about him. He was going to be their number 2 running back anyways because they have McCaffrey and they have McCaffrey. That's all they need to say. Wide receivers, they lost Curtis Samuel and Farrell Cooper, but brought in David Moore. I think they took a step back here. I like Curtis Samuel. I think that David Moore is okay. I'm not 100% sold on him. I don't see his fit with Sam Darnold.
Okay.
QB, we talked about, they brought in that we don't like anyways. I lost Russell Okung as offensive tackle, but they brought in Cam Irving. It's a step back. They still have what's his face? Moten. They still have him. So half their offensive tackles is solid. They just need to address the other side. They lost guard Chris Reed, brought in Eiflin. Slight upgrade, I think. Elflin, sorry. My eyes are getting tired on me, and they're.
It's all good, man. You
a
just
lot.
gotta power through this shit.
They lost defensive ends F.A. Obata and Stephen Weatherly. Lost defensive tackle Kawan Short. Linebacker Tahir Whitehead. But they brought in Denzel Perriman and Hassan Reddick. It's a huge upgrade getting Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick was starting to come into his own. It seemed coming into free agency. We've talked about it a few times. They needed to address a lot on that defense, and they seem to be doing that. They lost Rasul Douglas, cornerback, but they brought in AJ Bouye and Rashawn Melvin. There's an upgrade here. They lost Trey Boston at safety. Don't forget, they brought in long snapper J.J. Jansen.
Heck yeah.
And defensive line Morgan Fox. While I don't like the Sam Darnold trade, I think Sam Darnold's actually a step back from Tyrod Taylor, as I said earlier. They kind of took a step back at wide receiver. Maybe a little bit of a step forward at tight end. We'll see. Maybe a step back at on the offensive line, offensive tackle, step forward at guard. See, I'm going to say a step forward at defensive end, and I'm going to say it because
out of the growth of their young guys that they brought in.
No, because I think Hassan Reddick is actually going to play defensive end for them, not
gotcha.
linebacker.
Okay.
So, which mean and they took a step forward at linebacker because of like Tahir Whitehead, Denzel Perriman. Perriman seems to be playing better. I've never really liked Whitehead for some reason.
He's
yeah,
I thought he was always starter caliber, but like low grade starter caliber,
Mm-hmm.
and he's, like when he was with the Lions, he picked up a lot of tackles, man. But he was always one of those guys that he'd get like burned in coverage, and you'd always hear something bad about him missing an assignment, and so it's like he's definitely good enough to play, but he's not going to light the world on fire.
Yeah, I just like I said, I've never liked him. Even when he was with the Lions, it's like, okay, get over yourself. Cornerback, they took huge step forward.
Yeah.
While I think this is a hard one because the offense kind of like seems like it took a little bit of a step back, but I mean they have McCaffrey. Like I said, Darnold's a step back. Offensive line a little bit even there on the offensive line. Wide receiver step back. I'm going to say that this team, based on the fact that they addressed a lot of their needs on the defense, is actually taking a step forward because so many times last year they get a lead or they'd be in it, and their defense couldn't stop the team. So I think this team's moving in the right direction. It's taking a step forward.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that they definitely have some churn on the roster, but I think when you add it all up, I think they're moving in the right direction. You got to remember it's a new regime still. They're going into year two, and so they're just flipping some guys out and bringing their guys in, and so you kind of got to have a little bit of faith that they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so where do you think their priorities lie at this point?
I think their priorities. I think they have to do so. They have to address the offensive line. Like I said, they have to adjust. They have to address the other offensive tackle on the opposite side of Mutan Taylor, or however you say it. Guard play. They need to take a couple step forwards in guard play. And let me look at something real quick on that. Who else do they have left at safety? I think that's it. That's about it because I think
Okay.
Justin Burr, like Jeremy Chin, showed a lot last year as a strong safety, and then Justin Burris has taken a step forward. So I think that's it. Just the offensive line and is what they need to address. And I think they need a quarterback.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
Notice how they traded for a quarterback, and I said they need a quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, because they traded for Sam Darnold. So, yeah, they're still in the game. And you never know. It could happen. Okay, so next up we got the New Orleans Saints. And James, I got to tell you, this one was, I don't know. I didn't like doing this one. So we'll just go through it. Departures: quarterback Drew Brees, running back Dwayne Washington, wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders, tight ends Jared Cook and Josh Hill, offensive guard Nick Easton, defensive end Trey Hendrickson, defensive tackles Malcolm Brown and Sheldon Rankins, linebackers Quan Alexander and Alex Anzalone, cornerback Janoris Jenkins, safety DJ Swearinger, punter Thomas Morstead. They brought in tight end Nick Vanette, in defensive end Tano Passignan. And hey, I butcher it, whatever it is, what it is. The thing for them was more about re-signing people and getting within the salary cap because they were grossly over. And so, with Breeze retiring and them handing the reins off to Jameis Winston, I know that you've heard
Or
Sean
Taysom
Payton
Hill.
or Taysom Hill.
It's going to be a competition, they say.
Yeah, and I know that you've heard some good things about Sean Payton liking those guys. I still think it's a downgrade. At running back, it's basically a wash because Dwayne Washington was just.
Wait. A downgrade? Drew Brees couldn't throw the ball more than 10 yards last year.
I still think that his intelligence was good for that team. And history has shown Jameis Winston is a freaking turnover machine, man. And so, I'm just saying, that's my one man's opinion. One man's opinion.
Okay.
I think wide receiver, also a downgrade without Emmanuel Sanders. Tight end, they're down. Losing Jared Cook hurts them a little bit. At offensive guard, I think, even though lineups only had Easton at a 67, I think he was much more serviceable than that. And so I think they're down there. Defensive line, down. I mean, in both spots, defensive end, they're down. Defensive tackle, they're down. Linebacker, they're down. Cornerback, they're down. Safety, they're down. And even the freaking punter, they're down. James, I'm just looking at this team, and I don't see any way around it. They are taking a step back next year. Unless Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill turn out to be like some freak of nature, I think this team is going to be looking at a disappointment next year. And so I would look at their priorities. There's a lot of them. And so I don't put these in any particular order, but I think they need wide receiver help. Michael Thomas is great, but there's not much behind him. They need help at linebacker, I think, in a major way. I think they need help at cornerback. I think they need help all over the defensive line. I would say this one is safe to say last but not least. At some point, they are going to need help at tight end, unless maybe they just keep putting Taysom Hill out there more now and have Jameis Winston be the quarterback. But they've got a lot of holes to fill, and it's unusual for this team, which has been good for a long time. This could be a big reset year for them. We'll see what they do, man. I don't know. It looks ugly to me.
I agree. Are they under the cap yet? How many years in the future have they brought from like their 2047 cap hit yet?
Yeah. And how many voidable years do they have with all these guys? I don't know, dude. They're in trouble, dude. They're in trouble. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? Or is that it? That's all we need to say.
That's it. You're right. You're 100% spot on the fact that this team took a huge step back. All across the team, it took a step back because they are so fucked in their cap position, and it sucks.
All right. Well, then let's move on. Last but not least, this will be a more fun one, I think, to talk about, and it's all yours. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man.
All right. So the Buccaneers added nobody in free agency. They re-signed like all their guys, so that's the good part. Departures, Blaine Gabbert, big deal. Backup quarterback, he's not even going to see the field. Who cares? Wide receiver, Antonio Brown. It's a little bit interesting. He didn't really produce too much. He was coming on at the end last year. I would like to see them re-sign him and just kind of keep that all that offense together.
They're talking to him. They just haven't figured out the money part of it. But it sounds like they both want to make it happen.
Exactly. They lost guards, Joe Haig and Earl Watford. If my recollection is correct, these were backups anyways. So not really that much of a deficit at the guard play. AQ Shipley. I like AQ Shipley. It's unfortunate he was forced to retire because of some injury he had with his neck. I forget the full details about it, but it was like in week 10, week 11, and was Jensen played fine after that. So I think they'll be fine at the center position. They lost defensive tackle Steve McClendon, Ndamukong Suh, Nunez Roches, Vita Vea. Was he even playing?
He was hurt for a good chunk of the year, but I think he came back at the end of the playoffs for the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, but I'm just like that defense is still stacked.
They're totally stacked, man. I mean, honestly, like the only hole that I think they have on defense is at cornerback, and really those guys still did pretty good last year.
Yeah.
I mean, minus the first game against Kansas City, didn't they just get lit the frick up?
No. Maybe.
I think the first time they did, they got smoked, but then they came back with a passion.
No, it was but it wasn't that bad of a loss.
I think passing wise they got burned on a bunch of deep plays or something, but maybe I'm remembering wrong.
It's Mahomes. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's Mahomes. There you go. So they're good, man.
Let's just go. Let's see. Yeah, Mahomes had 462 yards against them and 3 TDs. Okay. But it's Mahomes. He does that to everyone.
Yeah. And they're young. Their whole secondary is very young, and they're only getting better every year. So I think that, they could use some help there, but it's not the end of the world. And obviously they won the Super Bowl, and they're bringing back their core. They're bringing back more than their core. I mean, if they're not Super Bowl favorites, I don't know how you could pick a favorite. It's messed up.
Yeah, exactly. So, like they lost Buchanan at linebacker, Cockrell cornerback, Andrew Adams safety. It's they're bringing back all their damn starters from last year.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah,
single one
that's
of
the
them.
big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they might need cornerback. I think their number one priority, and this is going to sound weird, is quarterback.
Getting the next guy.
Getting the next guy in there. Brady's got 1, 2, maybe 3 years left, and getting that next guy behind Brady, learning how to play the position.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think you got to plan on no matter what he says, it's a year-to-year thing with Brady. And
Mm-hmm.
his arm could fall off at any time. I mean, just go back and look at what happened with Peyton Manning, man. Once that arm strength goes, it gets nasty fast. And so I agree with you. They need to get a quarterback in there. But I think, I'm sure he's got one more run left in him. And
Mm-hmm.
if he doesn't, they're going to ride him till the wheels fall off anyhow. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, this team, it crazy to say, but the team actually is stayed level. Probably actually got better with with Brady having that second year in the
Yeah.
system and more time. Because if you look at how last year went, as the season went on, Brady got more and more comfortable with the offense, and they just started lighting it up.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword because you've got you've got that year of experience with that core of people together, which is going to make them dangerous. But you've also now got a year of tape that you've given to the rest of the league. And they're probably going to focus on the tape from that latter part of the year. But, it will make it a little bit harder. And so does that extra year of them staying together overcome now? People being able to see what they do and figure out how to maybe slow them down. And, it's Brady. I mean, he's kicked ass forever. So I'm sure they'll fucking dominate again. That's just how it goes. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any closing thoughts on the Buccaneers?
I can't believe that they were able to figure out how to keep all the fucking players.
Yeah, that's it goes to the salary cap doesn't matter anymore. It's like where there's a will, there's a way. We're just gonna figure it out and yeah.
Have
And
50, 57 voidable years and
yeah, and I don't know exactly how Tampa Bay did it, but they fucking pulled it off. So
well,
that's all that matters.
like they extended Brady, gave him a 5-year extension, but only 1 year was actually a valid year.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's a joke, but it's going to
Yeah.
make for some fun football, at least
Mm-hmm.
for those guys. Okay, so that's our wrap up for the off-season review on the NFC and AFC West and South teams. Let's move it on here, James, and hit our question of the week. And I kind of planted the seed earlier. It's a Teddy Bridgewater question. Now that they have given him permission to seek a trade, do you think he will be traded? And if so, where do you think he ends up? And while you're thinking about it, because I give you my 2 cents before you go here, I've kind of just narrowed down a couple teams, and I've not really looked too much at salary cap or anything like that because it maybe just doesn't matter anymore in this world. But I see Bridgewater having the most effect on a team that has a strong defense where he can come in and do what he does as a game manager, and that team can be competitive and possibly make a playoff run on the strength of the defense. And when I narrow my list down, I've got Washington, which I know they've already got Fitzpatrick. I've got Denver, which they're the Drew Lock questions hanging out there. I've got Pittsburgh with Big Ben, and then Chicago, who has Andy Dalton. And so when I'm looking at all of these locations,
You mean Russell Wilson, but
maybe. When I look at all these locations, I think that Chicago's probably the least likely because Nagy wants to be more creative on offense than probably what Bridgewater will allow him to do. Pittsburgh, I think they're in the biggest mess of a salary cap standpoint, but they would love to have a backup like Bridgewater. And the truth is, Mason Rudolph actually played okay when he got some time, the other year. And so, I think they're comfortable having him hold that role for another year. And so it goes down, in my opinion, to either Washington or Denver. And Washington, I think they're probably comfortable with what they're doing. They've committed to Fitzpatrick being the starter, and they brought back Heineke to be the backup, if I'm not mistaken. And so that leaves Denver. I think Denver desperately needs to put pressure on Drew Lock to grow the fuck up or get the fuck out. And Bridgewater could come in and he could definitely put the pressure on him. These are two totally different style quarterbacks. I don't want to make any mistake by saying that. But Denver does have the makings of a very solid defense. And they've got a running back. They've got wide receivers. If they get a few people on that offensive line, I think basically you put him in there and you're telling Drew Lock, you better play great or Teddy B's coming in and he's the starter. And I think he could be the starter on that team with that defense and get him into the playoffs. Just my opinion. Maybe I'm being a little aggressive by saying it, but I think that's a win-win for Denver because they're not in a position where they're going to be able to draft a guy to come in and replace Locke right away. And it's late in the game to try and pull off any other kind of crazy trades. And so this one could fall into their lap and maybe be a win for them. And hey, if Locke falters, that's Teddy B's path to being a starter again. What do you think, man?
So I think that, yes, Carolina has given him permission to seek a trade or to talk to teams about them trading for him. I think once Carolina gets in there and see what they got in Sam Darnold, they're going to be like, what the fuck did we do? And
Hold
Teddy
on
Bridgewater, Teddy, I know we told you you could seek a trade. We're not trading you. You're our starter because we fucked up and traded for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, or they would never do that because they don't want to eat crow, but they would just be like, sorry, Teddy, we're not getting the right compensation. Like we got to get, we value you so much that unless they wow us with an offer, we need to keep you. That's how they'll say it. But yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Translation, we fucked up by trading for Sam Darnold.
Yes, that's reading between the lines. Yes.
I agree with you that Denver seems to be I think Pittsburgh, salary cap situation aside, Pittsburgh is the best fit.
Yeah, because I think long term, let's just say this is it and Roethlisberger retires and then after next year they get out of their salary cap hell. That could be a great fit for Bridgewater with how great of a defense they have. I don't see it happening with how big of a mess they're in right now. That's all it is.
I know. I said that's why I said salary cap aside.
Yeah.
I think Pittsburgh's the best fit. I think considering salary cap implications, you might be right about Denver, but I don't think he's going to be traded.
Okay. Well, hey, so for anybody who's still watching, similar to Name That Stadium, we want you to hit us up with some comments. Tell us what you think for question of the week. We want your opinion. What do you think about all this kind of stuff? It's, I don't know. It's exciting for me to think about it, just kind of ponder what could happen out there. So, all that aside, that's all I got. What do you think, James? Any closing thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think that's all I got too.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, for everybody who's watching, thank you. We appreciate the support. If you like the show, give us that thumbs up. If you really liked us, hit the subscribe button. And we'll be doing this again next week, wrapping up our off-season review, hitting the AFC and NFC North teams next week. And then after that, we're squeezing in a mock draft before the NFL draft. So, please keep checking us out. And James, like always, man, it was fun. I will catch you later.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hike.